Welcome to History Tape number 11. And we're taping this March the 10th, 1986. And we're so pleased to have someone very special from Grand Prairie, Texas, that will bring back the memories of Grand Prairie of yesteryear. Roger Dickey, welcome to It's Happened in Grand Prairie.
Vicki.
Good. It happened in Grand Prairie many long years ago for you, but first of all, we'd like to thank Larry Sanchez and our new painting of what probably is the name of the old buildings in downtown Grand Prairie. And we're very proud of our new backdrop and want you to know that you're the first show that has it on when it's all ours, Roger.
Thank you.
Good. Roger, we know that you're an artist in your own right, but we're going to get to that a little later on in the program. Why don't you look into your camera and tell us a little bit about both sets of your grandparents that lived here in Grand Prairie many long years ago. Give us their names and the dates they lived here, please, sir.
Well, my grandfather and grandmother Dickey came here in around 1915 to 16. They moved from Grapeland, Texas here. They bought a little house over on the corner of Southeast 3rd and Grand Prairie Road. There's now an apartment house built there where they live.
Yes, there is.
And they lived there up until the times that they passed away. And that was my father's mother and father. I also had an uncle that came here long about that time that lived on what was known as the old Burger Farm. Now, for any of you that don't know where the Burger Farm is, that's where LTV is.
Right, that's where the aircraft factory...
That's where the aircraft factory is, and part of the old Burger Farm is also in Mountain Creek Lake, but then the part up on the hill is where LTV is. That's where my uncle lived, and I had about 4 or 5, well, let's see, 5 cousins. He had 5 children, and they're all cousins of mine. And
now, you had another set of grandparents here in Grand Prairie, Texas.
My mother's parents was Mr. and Mrs. S.G. Robinson, Samuel George Robinson.
And what was her maiden name and given name?
Her name was Carrie Leatherman.
Carrie Leatherman.
And her family came from primarily from Foreston, and they came here from Boyce, Texas. And they bought a 231-acre farm where they lived up until their death.
All right, now tell us the location of this farm, of the Robinsons' farm.
Well, it joins what would be 14th Street and Marshall Drive.
All right.
And then south, it went as far south as...
Lakeview Drive?
No. What's the other one out there?
A 303?
No, it's this way from it. Can't think of the name of it. Anyway, there was a nigger church on it there. And
Oh, at Hardy Road in that area?
This was on the south, right straight south of where their farm was.
All right.
And they had 231 acres there. Grandfather farmed mainly cotton, wheat, oats, and my grandmother had a good orchard, and she sold fruit. She also had cows and chickens, and every Saturday, well, we had to go to Bodecker's over in Oak Cliff and take the butter and the eggs over there. She had quite a group of Oak Cliff people that wanted her butter and eggs, and that was an every Saturday affair.
And her farm was now what was the old Lakeview, Lake Crest area, and maybe down around the Antioch Cemetery and maybe down into the lake?
Well, part of the farm on the east side joined the colored cemetery that was there on the south and around on the east side, and extended clear on down to Mountain Creek Lake in the bottom. And there's some 90 acres of it that's underwater now. And he sold it to the lake people when they wanted to build the lake there.
All right, now the Robinsons, are they the family that was so well known that Robinson Road is named for them?
Yes, they were quite well known. Grandfather and grandmother knew lots of people, of the older people that were here, and the county named the the street Robinson Road that is named after them.
Did they attend church here in Grand Prairie?
They went to the Methodist church all the time, and even though my parents were Presbyterians, well, any time I was living with them, well, I went to the Methodist church.
Well, you had a wonderful religious education then,
Yes,
getting
I
to
did.
swap from Presbyterian to Methodist.
But anyway, they went very regularly to the Methodist church and supported it in every way possible.
And your other grandparents that lived here, now the Robinsons were farmers. What did your other
Well,
grandparents do?
my grandfather Dickie had a blacksmith shop, and it was in the same areas where the M Bank is located. And he made wagon beds. He made oak wagon beds, and all the farmers around here wouldn't buy manufactured beds. They all wanted grandfather to make them because his bed was better than anybody else's.
All right.
And my uncle that was living with them, he did blacksmith work and did all that kind of work. Well, then Grandpa made wagon beds.
And they worked out of the same shop then?
Same shop together. They
All
worked
right.
together.
And your grandmother, what did she do? Was
Well,
she just a homemaker?
was just a housewife and took care of everything at home and was a good cook and fed everybody well.
That's wonderful.
And incidentally, later when I was old enough and was going to school here, well, I would ride a bicycle from the farm out south up to my grandmother Dickie's, leave it on her porch, and then walk across the railroad track and this Highway 80 to school because they wouldn't let me ride my bicycle across the railroad tracks and the Highway 80.
And since you were an only child of your parents, the first school that you attended in the Grand Prairie vicinity, was that the one that was located Idlewild Mountain Creek area?
Yes, we lived in a big stucco house up on the hill just where the underpass comes up over the hill there now. I don't remember what year it was torn down, but it's been a long time ago now. But anyway, I was about 7 years old, and my first school was Idlewild. There was 2 rooms there, brick 2-room school.
All right, now if your parents lived there, what did your mother and father do for a living?
Well, Dad farmed all that Mountain Creek bottom there, and it was during the war, World War I, that they were there. And he was a food major in the Army and had to go to Wisconsin and Michigan and all around and brought Holstein cattle to Texas. They'd never had any down here. So working through the Army and the county agent, well, he introduced Holstein cattle to Texas. And he had about 12 head that he kept at that location there. And the railroad took the fence down doing some repair, and one of the cows got killed, and the guy from the railroad come out and offered Dad $50 for the cow, and Dad said, well, that won't quite suffice because I paid $1,000 for the cow. So he got his papers and all of his pedigrees and everything and proved it to them that the cow cost $1,000. Well, they just like to add a fit. They never saw a cow worth $1,000 before.
And that was a registered
Holstein cattle. They had to milk them 3 times a day.
All right, now down at the farm in the Idlewild area, did you help with the chores? Or
Well, I was just about 7 years old, and of course I had to gather eggs and stuff like that, and of course had the experience of, you know, how hens will sneak off and start a nest underneath something. Well,
Yes.
I was down there one day and had a rake, and I was pulling eggs out from under there and pulled a great big old snake out from under there instead of eggs.
All right. And going to this little Idlewild school, that was a Dallas County school at that time. Can you remember some of the teachers or some of the students?
Well, I only remember one, and that was my teacher, and that was Cora Speck. And she was that. I think later, I think her daughter said that was her second school. I don't remember that much, but anyway, she was my first teacher.
And what year did you go to Idlewild that you can remember?
1918.
1918, and that was about the time of World War I,
Well,
right?
it was just ending then.
Ending World War
Yeah.
I. All right, do you remember any of the students that attended there with you? Can you recall any of them?
No, Ruthie, I'm sorry, I don't. I don't remember a single one because I was so young.
Well, since that was my old school also, I was very interested in that. Do you remember whether or not you attended there more than 1 year?
Just the 1 year.
Just the 1 year.
And
Then what happened?
Well, then they moved. Dad had with those Holstein cattle. Well, he'd made friends with a Mr. Gage that was wanting to start a big dairy, and so he and Dad went in partners, and they built Holtex Farms over on the old Highway 75 south of Dallas.
I see.
It is about 5 miles south of, well, it's Martin Luther King's highway now.
Yes.
And
And Bishop College, that
off of
area.
Home Street and in that area.
Yes.
And it was quite large at the time. They had trucks that delivered milk all over Dallas and Oak Cliff and everywhere, just about like Metzger's used to do. In fact, Metzger's and them were big competitors.
Well, while they were in this business over there, did you continue to go to school?
No,
Where?
I went to school, little school, I want to say Valley View, but I don't think that's quite right, but it was about 2 miles further south on Highway 75.
Highway 75.
From where we lived. And had to walk that 2 miles all the time. And fortunately, there was 2 or 3 other kids that lived in the same neighborhood, and we weren't by ourselves all the time walking.
Well, while your parents traveled around all over the United States, why did they finally leave Grand Prairie to go into another career?
Well, they had always thought that they would like to be ministers, and so when they were over at Holtex Farms, why, Dad just come in one day and he said, well, I've just decided we're going to do it, and so they made a deal and sold out their interest in the dairy, and we went to Chicago where they entered the school for study for the ministry. And the Congregational Church was the only church that would accept a lady as a
A licensed
ordained
minister.
And so Mother and Dad were ordained in the Congregational Church. And they were sent to Grayville, Illinois, which incidentally is on the banks of the Wabash, and that's where that song on the banks of the Wabash, I guess, was written, because the river made a big turn and Grayville was just followed around that turn there. And we were there, we got down there around latter part of 20 or 21, 1921. And I came out of there in the seventh grade, and promoted to the 8th grade. And so anyway, when they, at that time, while the folks were then, the church wanted them to travel around over the country, and where there's churches that needed a minister, well, they would go in there, stay 3 or 4 weeks, and get them together, members, and they'd call a minister and get the church going again. And so they started with that, and when they did, well, then I came back to Grand Prairie and stayed with my grandparents Robinson out on the farm.
The Robinsons that lived out near Marshall and Southeast 8th Street,
And,
right?
Yeah. And so then I entered high school.
How'd you get to school from Southeast 8th to high school then? Is that when you rode your bicycle?
I rode a bicycle every day for that 2.5 miles. And the only time I didn't ride that bicycle if it was too cold or if it was pouring down rain. And,
All right, in Grand Prairie High School, now you're back from Chicago, Illinois, in that area, into Grand Prairie, and in the 7th grade, getting ready to go into high school.
Well, I had a little trouble because we had 11 grades here and 12 grades up there, and so I was not ready for high school, but I got put in it anyway because of what my report card said. And of course, I didn't do too well the first 6 weeks. And in fact, I got sent to the principal's office because I told the teacher that when I couldn't tell her what the square root of a number was, well, I told her I didn't care.
And who was the principal and who was this teacher?
Well, Mr. Hutchins was the superintendent, and he looked rather unkindly on what I said.
I would think he would. And who was this teacher?
Miss Hart.
Miss Hart was your math teacher, right?
At that time. And so she had compassion and finally figured something was wrong, so she got to talking to me and found out where the mistake was. So rather than put me back, well, they decided they'd give me a little extra tutoring, and so all the teachers knew about it, and they helped me, and I made it.
That's wonderful.
And
And you graduated from the 11th grade in Grand Prairie from what class?
started in 1923 and graduated in 28.
In 28. And how many were in your graduating class? 19
19. That's a lot
in that
different from
class.
300 or 400, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And are there any members of your graduating class still living in Grand Prairie?
Well, Francis Williams is one,
All right.
and I've been trying to think. I don't know. Well, that's the only one just offhand I can think of that was in the class.
That's good. All right. Can you tell us any of the other teachers or who was the principal?
Well, Mr. Hudspeth was our superintendent, and Mr. C.B. Gentry was the principal.
Did you play football, or what did you do in high school?
Yeah, 1 year, my senior year, and that was the fall of 27, and Mr. Gentry was our coach. He also taught, it seemed to me like he taught history or something of that nature, but anyway, he was football coach.
What did you play? What did you play in the football team?
I was a big heavyweight center at 137 pounds.
137-pound center.
That wouldn't get very far this day and age.
It sure wouldn't.
But anyway, we had a pretty good team. We only lost one game the whole season. And that was the last game of the season. We lost it to Louisville. We shouldn't have, but we did.
Well, tell me how you came out with Irving that year.
Well, we had one unfortunate situation. That's no pass, no play that they are hollering about now was definitely in effect then. And
it was in effect.
You better believe it. And if you
How did they handle it?
Well, if you didn't make your grades this week, you didn't play next week. In other words, if your grades on Friday, if you had a class you didn't pass in, you didn't play in that game.
I see.
Then if you made it up during the week and got your grades back up, then you could play the next week.
So they let you make it up and then come back into play. I like that one.
That's the only mistake I think they made. 6 weeks is too long. Because a kid in football or track or whatever, he's out of it. I mean, if he misses that 6 weeks, well, he's just missed about 5 or 6 games.
Well, this no pass, no play, did that affect your team when you all played like Irving or any of the others?
We didn't know what was going to do without a quarterback, so the coach got to thinking, and I was the only one, fortunate as being center, that knew everybody's signals and who had to get the ball on every play and everything. So the coach said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. He said, we'll just get in a big circle, and says, you get in the middle and tell them what the play is. And he says, go back and line up, and he said, we'll have one of them just tell you height, and you throw the ball to them.
Is that the first time your football
I
team
don't
had ever
ever
used
remember
a circle?
I never remembered a huddle by any team before. That's the first time I ever heard tell of it. We didn't know to call it a huddle. We just got in a circle, and I told them what play, and we beat Irving 12-0, thank goodness.
Oh, that was good, wasn't it?
We had one boy on the team that I won't mention his name, but he hadn't gotten to play very much. And he was in the game, and Irving threw a pass, and he intercepted it and started running to the wrong goal line. Fortunately for us, we had a boy that was faster than he was.
And caught him.
Caught him, turned him around, he went all the way back, and darn near scored on it. He didn't, but he made a big gain out of it. But he was so excited when he got that ball that he just didn't realize which way was the right goal, and he was running the wrong way.
All right, now while you were in Grand Prairie, and what were you thinking about majoring in? I know that you're into art a lot.
Well, I studied art. I took art lessons from Frank Ray over in Dallas when I was 8 years old. I was the youngest pupil he ever had.
How did you get to Dallas to his art class?
My folks took me every Saturday.
They drove you every Saturday?
Drove me in, and it was over in Oak Cliff, and I did know the address, but I can't remember it now.
And you studied with him?
But I still belong to the Frank Ray Art Club. All of them, I'm the youngest one, believe it or not, that naturally, since I was only 8 years old. Most of them are ladies, and they're all older than I am. And
well, did you study art anymore? Like was there anyone in Grand Prairie to teach you art?
I studied art all the while we were in Illinois in Grayville. I went 18 miles to Carmi, Illinois every Saturday and stayed all day. And
how did you get there?
On the train.
On the train?
Yeah. The train went down in the morning, came back in the evening, and the lady would give me, I ate meals with them on Saturday. That was part of it.
Well, now, after Grand Prairie, when you had finished high school, did you take any art lessons from anyone in Grand Prairie?
I took art lessons all the time. I was in high school here in Arlington.
In Arlington?
From Mrs. Owens.
From Mrs. Owens. How did you get to Ms. Owens?
On the Interurban.
On the that's the electric machine that came between Dallas and Fort Worth.
30 minutes there was a car, so it was no problem to get on the Interurban and go up there.
Where did you catch the Interurban in Grand Prairie?
Right down where the...
Tell us where the Interurban station was
Well, the Interurban
located.
station sits where Wyatt's parking lot is now.
All right.
And I'd get on the Interurban, go up to Arlington, and walk over to Ms. Owens and catch it and come back when my lessons was over.
How did you get your art supplies, Roger?
Well, there was, we had stores in Dallas, and there wasn't anything in Grand Prairie, but we had stores in Dallas where you could go over and buy DeVoe and different ones that were standard art supplies. And then the teachers, just like now, the teachers carried some supplies, not a lot, but they had some stuff that you needed. And my senior year, I took from an Italian over in Dallas, and I even did a little bit of sculpturing and as well as oil painting. And we never got to bring any of it home because he was going to always have a big show and had all the students leave their work. Well, we went over one Saturday for our lessons, and the place was cleaned out, paintings and all.
He had absconded with it?
Yeah, everything.
Oh, dear.
So I have nothing to show for that year. Incidentally, I still have a number of my pictures that I painted when I was in Illinois, when I was about between 11 years and 13 years old.
How about the mural down at the Adolphus Hotel that you helped to paint?
Well, this old boy got a contract to paint this mural for the ballroom at the Adolphus, and it covered one whole wall, and it was a beautiful thing. And of course, what they didn't know was that we kids painted it. He didn't. All he did was touch it up. He would take his charcoal and draw the different buildings and things or whatever he wanted
and
to
then
show.
you all would fill it in.
Tell us what he wanted done, and we'd do the painting, and then he got all the money and everything, and we kids got the privilege of doing the work. Yeah.
All right. You've finished some art here in Grand Prairie. Now, I know that your family all this time had been traveling around over the United States. Where did you attend formal college?
Well, in Hastings, Nebraska, but let me drop back a minute. While I was in high school here, they had an art show downtown.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah, we were quite up to snuff.
Uptown.
It was on this deal here, only it was years before.
Oh, I see.
And
the community fair.
Yeah, and so nothing would do, but they wanted me to enter a picture in the art show.
All right.
Well, fortunately, I won first prize. And guess what I got for my prize?
What was the prize?
A pair of ladies' silk hose and a silver salt and pepper shaker.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
They were expecting a woman
to win it. So you put those in your hope chest, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know what Mother ever did with the stockings and the salt and pepper shaker. I don't have the little...
You don't have any of that evidence anymore.
But anyway, it surprised everybody. I still have the painting that won the prize. It was Anne Hathaway's cottage, a picture of it.
All right, now how about this formal education? I know you've gone on to college.
Well, I did. At that time, the folks, before I got to Nebraska, the folks were in Montana, and I went in my junior year in high school. Well, I went up there and spent the summer. And that summer, I mostly fished and just did kind of what I wanted to. After I got out of high school, my senior year, well, I went up there and spent the summer, but I worked on a ranch all summer.
Good.
And also took art lessons from a lady from Madison, Wisconsin, a Mrs. Hawkins. And we found out that she was one of their leading artists there. I guess she was, because at that time she got $250 a piece for little bitty 8 by 10 or 12 or 14 pictures.
That was exciting.
And that was a big price in those days. Well, anyway, I wanted a scene up there. I wanted to paint, and I didn't have anything to paint it on. I had some paints, but nothing to paint it on. Oh, it's large. It's probably 2 foot by 4 foot, great big picture. And so I went down to the dry goods store and bought some white muslin,
All right.
and went to the lumber yard and bought some 1x2s, and made me a frame and stretched that muslin on there and put 3 coats of white lead paint on it and let it dry, and painted my picture.
And that's the background for your painting.
And I still have it. It's over 50 years old and still looks real good.
And what was that painting? A scene
Well,
of
it
what?
was a Midnight Canyon that was seen up there that's quite famous, and they called it that because the mountains went up so high that about the middle of the afternoon, well, the sun didn't even shine down in the canyon. It was only just during the noon hours that it shined down in the canyon. It was that steep.
All right, now you've been a year out of high school, you worked on this ranch and took art lessons. Now tell me about that formal education. We have 3 minutes left.
We came on down to Red Cloud, Nebraska. My mother and dad, my dad had a church in Red Cloud. My mother had a little church in Riverton.
All right.
And I didn't bring it, but we had a write-up that appeared in the paper for the church's 100th anniversary, and there was quite a write-up in it about Mother and her ministry there at that church.
I noticed that you have an article here where she wrote a couple of books.
She did. She wrote One Man's Destiny and An Emerging Civilization, 2 books. One of them is on Abraham's life in the Bible, and the other one is on the history as it emerged through the years and the biblical part of it. They're both very nice books.
All right, you're from Red Cloud, and now we're back.
Well, then they were there about 6 or 7 years, and during that time I went to Hastings College and got my degree.
Hastings College where?
In Hastings, Nebraska.
Hastings, Nebraska, okay.
And Hastings is a Presbyterian school.
And what did you major in?
Well, I majored in chemistry, but I also had almost an electrical degree and also math deal, and I had a teacher's certificate. I couldn't get a school because every time I applied, well, there was 4, 5, 6 guys there that had PhDs and master's degrees and everything and had 14 or 15 years experience, and here I was, a greenhorn out of college.
Where did you meet Thelma, your wonderful wife?
Well, I decided I'd go into business for myself when I couldn't get a job, so I borrowed $100 from a friend of ours and went down to Franklin, Nebraska, and started an electrical shop, and radio and electrical. And I had to have a place to stay and board, and so a nice man come in and told me that just across the street on the corner, well, they served good meals and had a spare bedroom. Turned out that was Thelma Phillips' home, and Thelma is my wife for 51 years.
51 years. Oh, I think that's just one. Roger, we're going to have you back because we're going to bring you back from Hastings back to Grand Prairie, Texas with Thelma, and we want you to tell us next time about downtown Grand Prairie in those years that we're very, very interested in. We want to thank you very much for being here today, and before we leave, we have to let you show at least one photograph of Grand Prairie's old community center that was located out behind the current City Hall Annex. That was the very first community center, the first place for the city library. There was a library in the I believe the upstairs of the old Hancock drugstore.
That's right.
But the very first formal one was this. So we're going to end on that note. We want to thank you again, Roger, for being with us today. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live, and if we live, we're going to bring Roger back to tell more about Grand Prairie, Texas.
Thank you, Ruthie.
Thank you, Roger.